It's TK Friday, and today on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, I'm taking a deep dive into guided frequency separation. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Today on The Joy of Editing, it's going to be a deep dive into guided frequency separation. I had a lot of comments last week saying that you would like to see more on frequency separation, and I thought this week would be a good week to really get into this guided frequency separation found in the TK9 multi-mask panel under Workflow Extras. Now, to get the Workflow Extras, you click this button on the multi-mask panel, and this brings you into Workflow Extras, and you're going to find frequency separation right here. What you're seeing right now is a page out of the TK9 manual, and notice frequency separation comes under the heading Guided Frequency Separation, because if you'll note, this frequency separation has a lot of different buttons to really aid you in the entire frequency separation process. And I highly recommend that you also check out the manual, and I'll show you how to access the TK9 manual. To access the TK9 manual, go to any one of the TK9 panels and click a hamburger menu and look for Instructions PDF. Give that a click. That'll open up your web browser, and there's your TK9 instructions manual. So if you ever need some information on what something does, you can access this manual, which will help you out. When you click Instructions Manual, this may come up, Request for Permission. Just allow this. Just click Allow. You can also click Remember My Choice, but click Allow, and then your web browser opens up, and you'll be able to view the manual, which Tony spent a lot of time working on this manual, so check it out. It's full of information. Oh, and by the way, before we start, during the month of February 2024, there's a site-wide sale going on at the TK Web Store. You get 25% off everything. There's a new video out by Sean Bagshaw. This is a launch sale. It's called Iceland Highlands. I highly recommend that you pick it up. But anything you purchase, you'll get 25% off. But use my promo code DK15. It'll get you the 25% off during this month only. Then it'll go back to 15% off. But when you use that code, you're supporting The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And for that, I thank you. And now let's dive into guided frequency separation. I'll be going over all the different buttons here, but I have 3 different examples. On this image, I'm going to remove these footprints in the sand using guided frequency separation. On this image, I'll be working on some of the background. See how light this background is here in this flower over here? We'll be using guided frequency separation to help this image out. And lastly, I have this portrait image, and we can see some blemishes on the face. I'll show you how we can use frequency separation to get rid of those blemishes. And this is really where frequency separation started out, I believe anyway, working with like portraits. But we can use it on landscape images. We can use it on macro photography like this, flower photography. I love it with flower photography, as well as working with portraits. But we're going to start out with a landscape image first. As I said, I'll get rid of these footprints using frequency separation. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. So on my combo panel, I'm going to click my plus button a couple times, maybe 3 times, and I'm going to hold my space bar down, my hand tool comes up, and I'm going to slide over to these footprints so we can get close so we can see what we're doing here. Now, in case you're wondering, what is frequency separation? Let me just say this briefly. Frequency separation separates high frequency from low frequency. And think of high frequency as textures, the textures of the image, and low frequency as the color of the image. So in other words, we can work on texture separately from color, which is pretty cool, which I'll show you now. But that is really what it does. The TK9 plugin for Photoshop has 2 different frequency separations. One is found in your actions. If you click your TK button on your combo or CX panel, you'll find frequency separation. It's going to do basically the same thing as guided frequency separation. However, I find guided frequency separation easier to use and more helpful. To use guided frequency separation, you see this button here called Start FS, Start Frequency Separation. Click that. There's your guide, right? A Gaussian blur dialog comes up. Now you can change this number here. It defaults at a 10 pixel radius, but I find that usually works for me Basically, what you're trying to do is blur out the details of the image, but you could change that number and play around and see if you get better results, but I generally use 10. If you're happy with the radius choice, just click OK. And now you'll notice over here, we have a group called Frequency Separation. We have Texture Repair, Texture, and then we have Color Repair and Color Blur. These layers are here, but you're going to be working from this panel, and as you click these different buttons, it'll select the proper layer for you, so you really don't have to worry about what's happening down here. Now, you'll notice these gray layers with 50% gray. These would be your high frequency or texture layers, and this color blur would be the blurred layer, the low frequency, where you'll be getting your color from if you want to do things like clone color, but you'll see how that works here shortly. Now, in case you're wondering, see this texture layer? If I Option or Alt click on it, you can see that is the high frequency texture only layer. And if I Option or Alt click it again, now we got the image back. Now this texture repair layer and this texture layer, they're both high frequency layers. Don't worry about them so much because again, you'll be working with these buttons up here, and whenever you click a button, it'll go to the correct layer. And not only does it choose the right layer, but it gives you the right tool to work on that layer, so you don't really have to think about much. Let me show you which buttons are the most important for me anyway. Clone texture, heal texture, restore texture. Think of restore texture for correcting mistakes and restore color for correcting mistakes. But again, clone texture, heal texture, clone color, add color. This button, remove texture, it totally removes texture. In other words, it erases texture. That's a button you won't use that often. I may get to that one today, but don't hold me to it because I very rarely ever use it. Let's start out and get rid of a couple of these footprints in the sand, and we'll go over some of the different buttons. I'll start out with high frequency texture. So what we'll do is click on clone texture. When I click on clone texture, I get a clone stamp tool, and what I need to do is Option or Alt click an area outside, obviously, of the footprint that I want to get rid of. So I'm going to click like right here, Option or Alt click, and get a sample point. And then what we'll do is we'll just start to paint over this footprint. I'll move down and I'll paint some more. Just like that, making sure I got rid of the footprint. And you may say, well, what good is that, David? You got this ugly brown blob here, but I do have texture here. This sand texture got cloned down onto here. Now what I need to do is fix this color. Now I have two choices here. I can use color clone or add color. If I choose color clone, I will clone these colors that are in here. And there's some variation in color here with the sand, right? So I can use color clone to fix this, or I could use add color. Let's try add color first. I think color clone will be the best choice. But let me click on add color, and notice when I click this, a couple things will happen. Number one, I'm going to click on add color, and you'll notice a color picker comes up. So I have to pick a color. So I'm going to choose some sand color like right here, and we'll click OK. But also notice that it switched to the color repair layer, and now it gave me a brush tool. And the last time I had my brush set was at 20%. And what I think I would do here, let's go up to 100%. I'm going to type my 0 key, and that gives me 100%. And now let me just paint over this. And that doesn't look too bad. But let's try it with cloning color. Here's what we can do. Come back to frequency separation. You see where it says restore color? If I click on this, now it gives me an eraser tool, right? So it's very smart, and I can just paint over this and erase what I've just done. And now let's go back over to the frequency separation. And this time we're going to go to clone color. So I'll click on clone color, and now I have a clone stamp tool again. So I want to be right above this area here just to keep things consistent, you know, the way the sand is coming down through here. So I'm going to Option or Alt click about right here and come down here and just paint across here like this. I'll release the mouse click, and now I'll Option or Alt click about here and come and paint over this area. Now there's a little area here I don't like, so I can come over here and click on restore color. I have an eraser tool, and that I think was like right there. I can erase that. You see that? And that's what restore color and restore texture are all about, fixing mistakes. So you see how that fixed that? And I think that clone stamp tool did a better job. So you've learned how to use clone texture, clone color, add color, and we work with restore color. I didn't work with restore texture, but let me show you how that works. Now let's come over to frequency separation. Let's click on clone texture, and let me get rid of these two guys right here. I have a clone stamp tool. I'll Option or Alt click right here to sample right above this footstep right about here, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this texture by painting across here. Now, if I wanted to bring this texture back, what I can do is click Restore Texture. And again, if I make any mistakes, we can come in here and paint. You see that? Just like so. Now let me go ahead and get rid of these footprints across here. Let me click Clone Texture, Option or Alt click right here. We have that clone stamp tool, and I'm just going to go across here. You see how I overshot that? I'll fix that and I'll show you. I'm going to make this brush a little bit smaller and paint across here. Now I've got rid of all that texture, and I've made a few mistakes out here, but this is where I can come and get restore texture and make my brush smaller. And this is a history brush. You see that? And you don't have to worry about that because the panel sets you up. See, I can fix that little area I overshot there and there. I can fix it up. And that is, again, what this restore texture is all about, to help you fix things. Now let me click on clone color, and I got another clone stamp tool, and we can Option or Alt click right out here, and we can come down in here and we can paint over these guys and get these colors right. And it's just cloning the color. That's all, the low frequency color. You don't have to worry if it's low frequency or high frequency. All you need to know is it's going to get the job done. But that's all there is to it. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and get rid of all these footprints because that would take too long, and I have two more examples to show you. But I did not show you hill texture. So if I click on hill texture, you're going to get a spot hilling tool. And sometimes on little things like this, you can just paint over that like that, and it'll hill it right up. You see that? It just hills it. Now, it left a little mark there, and the color is off a little bit. So what I would do here, I would just get add color, click on add color, sample a color around there, click OK, and make my brush a lot smaller with a nice soft edge. And I would maybe back off the opacity to about 50%, and I would just paint over that once, twice, just till it looks blended properly. You see that? So you can also, with little areas like right here, these are little footsteps, little footprints of animals going across. We could come here if we wanted to get rid of them, click on hill texture again, and just paint over those just like so. And if there was any problems with the color, you could use add color or clone color to fix them. But that's it. But we're going to leave this image now, and we're going to move on to the next image. Before I move on, I almost forgot to tell you, once you're all done with your frequency separation, let's pretend I was done and I got rid of all these footprints. What you would want to do is click on the button Finish FS. So I'm going to click it. When you do, it closes the group and resets all your tools. Now you can always come here and open the group again and start working with these buttons all over again and click Finish FS when you're done. But I just wanted to let you know that. Now let's move on to this next image here, and we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're still using guided frequency separation, but I want to show you something. This is unique for this macro image. On this image, I'll use frequency separation to get rid of this flower. And you see all these light areas in this image, they're very distracting, and we can use frequency separation to get rid of that. Now the difference here is when I click on Start FS, I'm going to hold my Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, hold the Command or Control key down and click on Start FS. And you'll notice, and I showed this last week on that flower image, we get median, and that's best when you're working with color along edges. You don't have to really worry about the edges getting any weird anomalies around the edges. And I'm going to use that radius of 10 again and click OK. I'll tackle these light areas up in here first. And to do that, what we're going to do is click on Add Color, not Clone Color. And I want to sample a color like right about here. Click OK. And now I'm going to make my brush rather large with a nice soft edge on it. And I'm going to start out at like 20% opacity. If you don't have 20%, you can type your 2 key. But all I'm going to do is paint over this whole area like this and tone that down. Okay, you see that? And then I'll come here again and paint over it one more time right in here and up in here. Now I'll go down to 10%. I'll type my 1 key and I'll paint over this, and I'll paint over this again. But you see how that tones it down? I'll make my brush a little bit smaller and sample right here and just paint over this a little bit right in here. Maybe sample here and paint over this a couple times just to tone that down, just so that those areas aren't distracting us. You see that? And I might sample right up here, Option or Alt click, and I'm still at 10%, and I'll just paint over this area a little bit, right like that, and maybe over here. But see how that tones that down? Let me shut off this group frequency separation. There's before and there's after. See how that is fixed at? Now I could come down here too and maybe sample this color. And let's go back to 20%. I'll type my 2 key, make my brush a little bit larger. I'm going to paint over this, over in here a couple times, maybe up in here, just like that. And if I wanted to, I can even make the brush smaller and just paint along here, just to like tone that down. I'll shut this frequency separation group off again by clicking the eye. So there's before and there's the after, but you see how those distractions are removed. And now we're studying this, what is this, a moth, I believe it is, but you know, it's keeping our attention here and off of here. Again, let me shut it off. You see the difference there? This is very effective when you're working with macro images or flower images, because the cool thing about it is it will not destroy any textures in here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom into this area right here to show you. Now I'm really zoomed in here, and I hope you can see the textures are all still in here. The little bit of noise that was in this image, as I move around, you can see all that texture is still in there, and even down in here. So that's the beauty of frequency separation. I'm going to go ahead and click this button to fit this to the screen again. Now let's work on this flower to remove it. So what I'm going to do is click my plus button a few times here, hold my shift key down, my hand tool comes up, and I think that's going to be good right about there. All right. So what we're going to do next is click on Add Color. I'm going to sample this color right here and click OK. And now I think I'm going to start out at like 50% opacity, so I'll type my 5 key. And what I want to do is just start blending that color into here. Like so, just like that. I'm going to keep painting it till this color here matches this color here. And I'm getting close. And I think I got it right about there. All right. And now you can see some residue here. This is in the texture right here. So we're going to fix that in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and come down into this area. I'm going to sample this dark color, and I'm going to start painting across here and get rid of this. I got to get rid of the stem right here. And I might even get rid of some of this stuff, you know, make it go darker. And again, I'm just looking to blend this all in so you don't see that stem anymore. Now, some of its texture still may be in there, but that's okay. We'll take care of that. And I think that should do it right there. And now I'll hold my shift key down and my hand tool comes up. And now let's fix this up in here. This is a texture problem. Now I'll click on Clone Texture and my Clone Stamp tool comes up and I'll size it accordingly. Option or I'll click about here and I'll just start painting that texture like that down into here. And let's see, a little bit more, painting it across here. Okay, and I think that's good. I have this light area right here. So what we can do there is let's go back to Add Color, and I want to sample this color like right here. Click OK. And I think I'll up my brush opacity to 70%. I just type my 7 key, and I'll paint across here. You see that, and I can just get rid of that like so. I think that's going to work right there. I'm going to type my 2 key and just blend this a little bit. Okay, that's it. And if I want to, I can come here, Option or Alt click, sample this color, and paint across some of these light areas right in here that may be drawing the eye. Just paint across there, just like that. Every time I lift my brushes, I always say I'm adding more of the effect. And right in here too, I'm going to Option or Alt click, sample this color. Isn't this cool? And just paint across here a few times. And maybe right over here as well. Okay, so that's good. Now, I think that texture is matching really nicely there. And what I might do is just sample this right here and just paint across here a little bit. And even this little, like a little bit of a red tone, maybe I'll just paint that across here like that, just to make it look a little more believable. Okay, maybe something like that I think is good. Option Alt click here and just kind of blend this up and mix this in just so it looks nice. And I think that's good. Now, if we look down here, we still see the texture of that stem. So let's come back and click on Clone Texture. And now I'll make my brush a little bit smaller. Option Alt click here and sample. And just like that, we'll just start to paint over that texture where that stem was. So all we're doing is cloning the actual texture itself. Okay, just like that, up into here. And I think we've got it. Now let me go ahead and zoom out by clicking this button here to fit the screen. And I think that looks pretty good, right? Now let me shut off the overall frequency separation layer. So here is before and here's after. And see this little brown up in here? We could come here, click Add Color. And let me sample this color right here by clicking and click OK. And now I think at about 30% opacity, I just type my 3 key. I'm just going to paint over this brown area. There's one pass, here's another pass. Maybe I'll paint right there and paint right there. Just to let that brown stuff go away, just to keep your eye off it. And if I want to, I can sample right here and just paint on there a couple times. All right, there you go. And so now let's take a look. Let me shut off the group frequency separation by clicking the eye. There is before and there's after. But isn't that nice how frequency separation helps us to focus our attention on the moth? I think it's a moth, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments section below. Now let's move on to our last image, and this is a typical job for frequency separation blemish removal. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. I'm going to click my plus button. Once, twice, right like that. I'm not going to do this entire image. I've already done it, and I'll show you my final result. Like some of this red splotchiness under the nose, I fixed that all with frequency separation. I just used Add Color to get rid of that, but I'm going to show you how to remove some blemishes here. So we're going to start out with this blemish right here. Now for these blemishes, what you could do, you could try Heal Texture, and you're going to get a spot healing tool. And you could come here, I'll make it a little bit larger, and we can just paint over this like that. And, you know, sometimes that'll do a pretty good job. And remember, if you want to restore this, just click Restore Texture. I'll make the brush a little bit smaller, and I can just paint over that and bring it back. Or I really like to use Clone Texture, so I'm going to click on Clone Texture. The Clone Stamp tool comes up, and I like to sample around the area. So I'm just going to Option or Alt click here and just paint over here. Maybe I'll Option or Alt click over here, paint over that. Maybe Option or Alt click here. You know, get it from different areas, okay, and then maybe right here. So there it is, but we still have that red. Now all we need to do is click on Clone Color or Add Color. I'll be honest with you, on a face, I usually use Add Color, so let's click on Add Color. I'll sample a color around this blemish right here, so I'm going to click about right here and click OK. And now what I'll do is make my brush smaller. I have a nice soft edge on here, and at 30% I think is a good starting point. I'm just going to paint on here. I lifted my brush, I'm painting again, painting again. I'm just trying to blend it, but look at that, it is gone. So let me shut this layer off. Here's before and there's after, just like that. Now, some of these little areas like this, you could come here and just get Heal Texture and just paint over those, and they'll just go away, just like that. See right here? We can paint over that, and it just goes away. Even like little areas like right here and here, you can use the Heal Texture for that. So that's really nice. And let's get rid of one more blemish, like right here. And so let's go to Clone Texture, and I'll Option or Alt click about here. Come down and let's Option or Alt click here. A couple areas I just want to paint over that, and then just grab Add Color, click on the Add Color button, sample a color like right here, click OK, and I'm still at 30% opacity, and I'll just paint over that a couple times and see it goes away. Even like here on this area right here, I could, and this will be the last one I do, I'm going to click on clone texture and click right about here and just paint over that like that. And I still have that little red blotchiness right there. So again, add color, sample around it like right here, click OK. With 30% opacity, just hit it a couple times and it just cleans up. And you just do it for the entire image. And I also used, for the eyes up here, I'll just show you what I did. I used hill texture and I'll make the brush a little bit smaller. I'm just using my left bracket key to make it smaller, and I'm just going to paint over like this. I'm going to come down into here and it goes away. You see that? And you can remove hairs by just painting up through the hair just like this. I'll remove this hair for you. See how that just goes away? And we'll just paint up through here. And we'll continue to paint up. I'm just taking it little bites at a time, painting up through here like so. Might paint across here just to heal that. Paint up through here, up into here. And then this little hair right here, I can come and click Restore Texture, make my brush really small, I mean really tiny, and just paint right like that. Okay, and then that little piece that's stuck out there, I'm going to go back to Hill Texture, make that brush really small, and just paint like right like so. And get rid of that. You see that? And then for the red, we could click Add Color and sample like right here. Click OK. And I'm at 30% opacity, so that's too much. I'm going to do a Command Z, or you could go back a step on your combo panel or CX panel by clicking this button. I'm going to go to 10%. I was way too high there. And I can paint over some of the red. Every time I lift that brush, remember I'm adding a little bit more of the paint. And so we can just go over these eyes like so. And let me go over this a couple times right here. Now I might have to go back and grab my Hill Texture by clicking on that, and I will just come right here and clean that up. You see that? Okay, some of that was in the actual texture itself. Okay, so that's how I did that. And now let me go ahead and zoom back out by clicking this button right here. All right, so let me show you my overall image that I've done earlier. So here it is right here. So there you can see with the frequency separation, let me shut off the frequency separation group. Here's before and here is after. I cleaned that all up just with frequency separation. So there you go. Now back to this image here. Remember, with all images, when you're done with your frequency separation, again, let me shut this off. So look at the blemishes I removed, if you can remember where they were at. I'm going to shut this off. Here's before and here is after. Okay, now remember, let's pretend I was done with this. What we would do at that point would be to click on Finish FS, which closes this group and resets all your tools. And remember, you can always open this back up again, close it, whatever you want to do, and come back and work on frequency separation again. But there it is. I do have one final thing to show you, which I almost forgot to show you, and that is Remove Texture. Remember, I told you that's one I don't use that much, so let me show you how that works. But first off, let me open this group back up by clicking on this arrow right here and opening up the group. And now let's go to Remove Texture. I'm going to click on this button. Right now, my brush is at 100% opacity, and you see the eye right here. If I paint right here, I totally remove any texture, so it is totally smooth. And I understand that looks horrible, right? But I'll show you what we could do. Say I just wanted a little bit of that green in there, but not as much. Well, first off, let me click on Restore Texture, because remember, Restore Texture lets me put all that texture back in there. So I'll put it back in here. So now we'll go to Remove Texture, and I'll take my opacity down to like 30%. And then I can paint along here at 30%. See, and I can just reduce that a little bit. I've taken 30% of that green away. That's one thing you could use it for. You might want to use it to remove some noise in an area where there's too much noise in an image. So that's another reason you could use it. So it does have a purpose, but I don't generally use it that often. Well, there it is, everyone. Another TK Friday comes to a close, and I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into guided frequency separation, and I hope you give it a try out on your images. It's not always needed, but when you need it, it really comes in handy. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe, click that notification bell, and then click all so that you'll receive all notifications. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I will see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.